Tottenham's season is under threat of being derailed before it's even begun. That huge injury to James Maddison in the pre-season friendly against Newcastle, a huge talking point for Tottenham as we head into the new campaign. Less than 2 weeks now, or 2 weeks exactly, until we play PSG in the Super Cup. And all of a sudden, we have got a serious lack of depth in that number 10 position. If James Maddison has re-injured that same knee and the scans come back to show that he's going to be out for another lengthy period of time, there is no doubt that Tottenham must go out and buy a decent number 10 to replace him. We've got no Maddison. We've got no Dejan Kulusevski as it stands. Heung-min Son is leaving the club. We need attacking reinforcements. And I've nailed down 3 of who I think would be the best targets for Spurs to go after to play in that attacking midfield role. Now, Morgan Gibbs-White would have been a perfect person to come into the squad and fill that gap, but we have to look for alternatives. And we are going to go for a slightly different mould of player to suggest James Maddison replacements, because we need someone that is versatile. With left wing now being a position where there's a bit more of a gap and that attacking midfield role, while there is no Dan Kulusevski and James Maddison involved in the squad, we need a player who is able to play in that number 10 role, in that wing role, or even maybe as sort of like a false striker role as well. I think Thomas Frank values versatility in his squad. So that's why the 3 players that I have picked out for this video who would be ideal replacements for James Maddison are included. But before I do get into who should replace James Maddison during his injury for the next season, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new around here, and like the video if you are enjoying my content. My goal by the end of the 2025-26 season is to reach 5,000 subscribers. So if you can help me along that journey, it would be so greatly appreciated. And I will do my best to continue providing you guys with content across the entire campaign. So let's start with the obvious replacement for James Maddison. I think a lot of you probably think this is ideal as well, and I know he's been linked with Arsenal in recent weeks, but I just think Eberechi Eze is the perfect player to come into this Tottenham squad. Now, reports over the last couple of weeks or so have said that Thomas Frank isn't necessarily keen on Eberechi Eze because he's not maybe as versatile as he wants him to be. I do think he is most prolific in that number 10 attack and midfield role, but like I said, Frank wants someone that can play both. However, I've seen him play left wing for Crystal Palace as well. I've seen him play in that number 10 role, and I think he's great in both positions. So I don't see why Spurs should not be able to go for someone like Eze to fill that gap. And we have tracked him for a number of years now. We have considered making a bid for a long time, but we just never have done. Now, there are contrasting reports suggesting that his release clause may or may not still be active, which is set at around the £68.5 million mark. But it's a hefty fee. However, I feel like with the money that we've saved from João Paulino and the fact that we were going to spend 60 million on Morgan Gibbs-White, the money is there to be spent, and this now becomes a priority position. A lot of you will know about Eberechi Eze already, how he plays, how he operates, how good he really is. But here's a very quick reminder for you. He, of course, led Crystal Palace to that FA Cup win last season, beating Manchester City in the final, getting his hands on silverware, and there is a reason that Arsenal are keen on him as well. He is central to how Palace play attacking-wise, and in that gap of the number 10 role that Thomas Frank so loves, Eberechi Eze is given the freedom and the creative space to be able to pull the strings, and I feel like that is going to be so important to how we set up this season. I've always stood by the fact that James Maddison is probably our most important player when he's on the pitch and when he's fit, because he just has that eye to be able to spot a pass or just play it into the gaps that are needed to get us on the front foot. Eberechi Eze also does that, but he's also extremely talented with the ball at his feet. We know that he's a very keen runner in terms of going forward, at least, maybe not so much in terms of defensive work and tracking backwards, but we know that he can beat his man. We know that he's got a strike on him. We know that he has an eye for a good pass as well. So I feel like he ticks a lot of boxes for Tottenham. I mean, he averages like 3.5 shots per 90 minutes for Palace across the last season or so. Interestingly, shot creating actions is a stat that stands out for him. So either he shoots or creates the opportunity for teammates around him to shoot, on average nearly 5 times per game. So that just shows you how important he is to Crystal Palace's attack. Successful take-ons per 90 minute as well, 2.33. It ranks him inside the top sort of 10-15% of players in his position across Europe, which is insane. We know that he is going to be a creator. We know that he's going to be a goal scorer. And if we need to put him out on the left wing, albeit we've got Odegaard, Tell, Brennan Johnson, Richarlison can play out there, I think he's just such a smart option. He would certainly be top of my list to bring into Tottenham. And I know he's expensive, and I know Thomas Frank may not be the biggest fan of him, but it just seems like a no-brainer for me, and I think he would be the ideal replacement for James Maddison. But there are a couple of other names that we can talk about, and another player that Spurs have been linked with at also Chelsea is Xavi Simons from RB Leipzig. Again, a very versatile player who can play in a number of different positions. I believe he wants to leave RB Leipzig this summer, and as it stands, as of the time of recording this video, he is still not signed for Chelsea, nor have they reportedly even made a bid for him yet. I do think they're still trying to get players out of the door before they move for him. They're also in talks to sign Alejandro Garnacho from Manchester United as well. So it feels like there's an opportunity to try and convince Xavi Simons to potentially come to Tottenham. And again, he can play on the wing, he can play in that number 10 role, he could play up front if he needed to, and his stats are certainly just as encouraging as Eberechi Eze's as well. Averages similarly to Eze, 4.71 shot creating actions per 90 minutes, ranked right up there across Europe. 5.79 progressive passes per 90, which is really important. For that player that is going to be pulling the strings for us and playing in that number 10 role, you want them to be moving forwards and having their eyes forwards rather than backwards and sideways. Xavi Simons does that in abundance. It's incredible. He has an excellent pass completion rate and passes attempted rate as well. The interesting thing about Simons as well, he's got a couple of good defensive stats, making nearly 1 clearance per 90 minutes and nearly winning 1 aerial duel per 90 minutes as well. And for someone of his size and stature, that is quite surprising, but also encouraging to see that he can do a job helping to defend as well, which we know is going to be a lot more important under Thomas Frank than it was last year under Ange Postecoglou. We know that Xavi Simons is prolific as well, and I just feel like he's only going to grow into a much better player than he already is now. If he were to make that switch to the Premier League and join someone like Tottenham, it's going to be great for his development, and he's got the opportunity to come in and make an impact immediately. So for me, below Eberechi Eze, or even on par, I would be happy with either of these signings. They are the top two for me that we should be targeting for that currently vacant number 10 role while we wait to hear the extent of Maddison's injury. The final player that I want to talk about is Fermin Lopez, currently at Barcelona, and I'm not entirely sure how important he is to their plans under Hansi Flick. I know that Barcelona have a lot of registration issues, financial issues, and this feels like it would be a good market opportunity. Only 22 years old, plays in that attacking midfield role, but with Barcelona's attack being pretty set in that front three of Rafinha, Lewandowski, Yamal, they've got the likes of Dani Olmo also in central midfielder, Gavi, Pedri, so many options. Someone like Fermin Lopez hasn't necessarily been given the right opportunity that he needs to flourish and prove what a good player he is. For those of you that have watched him, you would have been very impressed with what you've seen. He is perhaps one of the more underrated attacking midfielders across Europe, and his stats back up that he is an incredibly talented player. Averages 3 shots per 90 minutes in a game, and while this is probably pretty average for a player playing for Barcelona, who are one of the more dominant sides in Spain, it's encouraging to see that he's willing to take shots on. I feel like a lot of the players in the current Tottenham squad don't necessarily do that enough. Again, shot creating actions, 3.85, so slightly lower than Eze and Xavi Simons, but still encouraging nonetheless. Averages an assist every other game, which I think is really impressive considering he doesn't actually play that often. So when he is on the pitch, you know that he's making an impact. And then again, pretty well-rounded in terms of successful take-ons at 1.69 per 90. Touches in the attacking penalty area, 4.5 per 90 minutes. So he will get forward, he will attack, he will be central to how you play in a creative stance. And I think he would also be an incredibly solid option. Now, there are a lot of other names out there that we could talk about for the number 10 role. A lot of them I don't necessarily think are too realistic. I've seen a lot of people saying that we should go for someone like Jack Grealish. I just don't think he's the answer. 30 years old, hasn't really been great over the last 2 or 3 years, is a big gamble, has an incredibly high wage bill, and I just think he's past his best compared to the options out there as well. I think that's one that we stay well away from. Mikkel Damsgaard could be a shout, obviously playing for Brentford, and I'm not sure how willing they would be to sell him, but I've spoken to Brentford fans who've said actually last season Damsgaard was their player of the year despite being in a team with Wissa and Buemo, and if Thomas Frank could have a word with him and get him to join Spurs, that's definitely an interesting one, albeit less of a marquee signing that I think a lot of us Spurs fans are expecting now that we have such a big gap in that role. But let me know who you would sign in that number 10 role down below in the comments. There are, as I said, so many options out there. We have missed out on a lot already. As you guys well know, I'm just seeing more and more be picked up in the transfer market. So it's imperative that Tottenham get a move on as quickly as possible if we're going to go into this Super Cup in a couple of weeks and the new Premier League season and stand a chance. If we don't move and if we don't address these issues, it's going to be a really tough start for Thomas Frank. And we want to give him the best possible opportunity to be able to compete on all four fronts this season. But thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel. As I said, if you are new around here, I appreciate all of your support. But yeah, that's it from me for this one. You guys enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the Bayern Munich game on Thursday. I'll be back with another video very, very soon. And as always, come on you Spurs.